Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. Very excited to welcome this morning's presenter, Mr. John McNair, Vice President of Golf Operations for JC Resorts and past President of the Southern California section. He's also the Golf Professional of the Year for the section in 2015. He has been with JC Resorts for over 19 years. He's also served 2 decades of experience in the golf industry. Mr. McNair manages all aspects of JC Resorts golf operations, golf course maintenance, and food and beverage venues. John is a regular contributor to various golf publications, including PGA and Golf Inc. magazines. He is actively involved in industry-related associations as a past chairman of the San Diego Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Golf Committee, and currently is the honorary past president for the Southern California PGA section. Mr. McNair, welcome to the Catalyst webinar series. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you very much for the introduction, John, and good morning, everyone. Excited to be here. Today's presentation is on successful traits of a manager in today's competitive golf market. I'm going to take the next 45 minutes to go through the presentation, and feel free to type in any questions to John as we go through the presentation, and I'd be glad to answer them as we go through if you have any clarifying questions. With that, our agenda today, we're going to start with an overview of sales and marketing, then financial, then just touch on food and beverage, some California law, which is always fun stuff, then communication for success, training, and then some Q&A. We're going to start with defining today's competitive golf market opportunities. And I just want to go through 3 trends that I think are very important for every successful manager in the golf business to know today. So when they're creating marketing programs or spending time with their teams, they're very well prepared. The first one here that I have is talks about participation from 1992 to 2001 to 2011 and ages 25 to 44. And as you can see in this slide, back in 92, there was 45.2% of all golfers were in that age range of 25 to 44. And today, well, in 2011, it was only 31%. So what that is telling us is we're getting less and less in that area, and the reasons why are, we believe, are number one, the male role has changed at home. They're not going out for 2 days of golf on the weekend. One day they're either home doing chores or they're out with their kids, and it's the other areas. Both parents are much more involved with their kids' activities and sports, etc. And the last one is just the time constraint. So we need to take into those consideration those reasons why when we're creating any type of golf program or marketing program. Now I'm going to shift to where the trends are of recent years. This shows a generational shift in rounds by age. As you can see the graph on the top left, it's where the rounds of golf were played by age. And as you can see, it's almost a bellwether curve. It just goes up, kind of it's the highest point at like 45, actually 35, 45, in that range, and then comes back down to 75. Fast forward just 8 years, and as you can see, it's pretty much a straight line up. So what's happened is the number of golf rounds played have shifted into greater into ages 55 to 74, and left ages 25 to 44, which kind of mirrors the graph that we showed earlier. So what does that mean for a manager in today's golf environment? What it says is if you're going to have a senior rate of any sort, you're basically discounting to 58% of your golfers. So you can see here by the graph at the bottom right, 58% of golfers are golf rounds played, are ages 55 and older. So if you're going to put in a senior rate, just know you basically discounted to half your golfing population or half your rounds. So it's very important to know that as you go through and see that generational shift. Next slide talks about the number of golfers to the number of golf rounds played. And as you can see by this graph, if you look at the number of golfers that play 10 or more rounds a year, it's essentially half. 50% of golfers are playing 10 or more rounds. But if you look to the chart on the right side where it has rounds, 90% of rounds are played by someone who plays 10 or more rounds. So what does that mean for today's golf environment, for managing today's golf courses? What it means is I would recommend then focusing on those 90% of rounds. You're only getting, for the people that play under 10 rounds, it's only 10% of the total rounds played. So as we like to say at JC Resorts, let's fish for whales, not minnows. So focus on the golfers that you know are going to play it 10 or more times, because those are the people that are going to basically be playing 90% of the rounds at your golf course. Now we're going to shift over to sales and marketing. And I want to start with this because I'm a big believer that without a good sales and marketing plan and program, that it's very difficult for success. And I can tell you ownership always is looking how you're growing rounds, and particularly in today's competitive golf market. The first slide I want to talk about was marketing. First thing is, how do you get golfers, and what are golfers looking at, and how do they find your golf course? Word of mouth, obviously, advertising, the internet's big today, direct marketing, and price point will vary also by frequency. And that's how golfers will buy golf or lessons. One thing I've learned over the years in marketing is there is no home runs in marketing. There's not one program or one event that's going to do it. It takes a lot of small successes to have a successful marketing plan. And an annual marketing plan is the cornerstone to, in my opinion, to successful marketing and successful driving revenues at a golf course. You must have a plan. It starts with a plan. And I'd recommend, no matter even if you're teaching professional, you have your own business, I still recommend that you sit down and create a marketing plan on paper and make it in writing and put down the different areas that we're going to go through here today, so you can focus on those and kind of revisit that on a weekly or monthly basis to know exactly where you are for marketing your golf course or your lessons. It all starts with a brand, and it's important to know what delineates you from your competition and differentiates you. So, for example, at JC Golf, our brand is quality, value, and variety, where we have something for everyone, all types of golfers. We have courses like Oaks North for executive course for beginners, juniors, etc. And we have Rancho Barnawin that has for executive lunches and dinners and tournaments, those kind of things. So we've got something for everybody. But know your brand of your golf course. It might be, here's just some examples on here, is home of the best greens in the county, or the most scenic course in the county. If you're a teacher, example might be, we specialize in teaching women the game of golf. Know what your niche is and focus on that. It's also important to know what your competition's doing, and market against that, and market your strengths against what the competition's doing. Next is database. That's the same thing with teachers, golf courses, regardless how big or small. It's very, very important to have a quality database. We have a saying that the largest database usually wins, because you can market to those people cost effectively, particularly in today's economy. The other thing is the quality of it. Back in the day, we were always trying to get the addresses and the zip codes, etc. Now we believe in just getting the name, the email, and the zip code. We found that email marketing is the most cost-effective way to market to them. And direct mail, unless you're going for tournaments or membership, is pretty much out the door at this point. The next thing is to try to get the membership or the database targeted, ideally by geographic region. So if you have seniors that you're marketing to, keep that in a separate database. Juniors, etc. That way, when you're doing your marketing campaigns, you can specialize to those groups. Some examples of how to capture emails: offering rewards. Reward your employees by collecting emails. We actually track it at JC Resorts every month by golf course who collects the most emails. There again, we focus on it. We think it's that important. Guest sign-in sheets, having a birthday club or some type of thing like that, where somebody can win a reward or event for signing up. Tee time confirmations. We try to get their email capture so we can send them an email thanking them for booking their tee time before they ever show up. Also then talking about maybe a food and beverage special or lesson program, etc., to try to market them into other areas of opportunity for spending at the golf course. And then event raffles, raffle off a foursome. We do that at tournaments and things like that to try to capture email names. And then the last one is the tournament database. We like to make sure we have it all in an electronic form and keep the database fresh every year. So it's very easy to resend emails out to the market, particularly if you have times of need, particularly like after holidays, after Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July. We might do a promotional offer at a discounted rate to our tournaments to give them a value at a time of need when we would typically have a very slow day. Website. This is very important. I think this is where I think some of the golf courses have gotten away in recent years, is always make sure you have your best guaranteed rate on your website. We actually talk about it, market it, tell everybody that, because we want to have people driving it to our website, not to a third party's website. So I would really focus on that and make sure that you tout that and that all your staff knows that they should absolutely communicate to guests that they need to go to your website, not a third party website. Then next thing is drive visitors to purchase. Make sure you can sell rounds of golf, tournaments, lessons, etc. on the site. And then next is make sure it's mobile/tablet friendly. It's very, very important. We used to have our tee time system go through our point of sale, which wasn't bad. It was okay, but there again, just okay on something that's, basically almost half your web traffic. It's very, very important to make sure that that is robust. And so we switched just as recent as a year ago, and we've seen it almost triple in the number of web bookings on our website. So I highly recommend you look at that and make sure it's mobile/tablet friendly. The other area is mobile apps, making sure you have some form of that. Really look at your website redesign on a regular basis, every 2 to 3 years at the most. You want to be re-looking at that, re-engineering that. It changes so frequently on the way Google searches and search engine optimization that it's really important that you continue to look at your website redesign on a regular basis. And then the last one is search engine optimization, making sure that you're looking to see where you are on Google. And I highly recommend that all of you, on at least an every other month or quarterly basis at a minimum, just Google your golf course and see what page it lands and what website pops up first. Is it Golf Now? Is it some other third-party vendor? Is it a tee time booking engine other than yours? Or where's your website? That's very, very important, because when people Google that, that's what they're going to be going for, particularly millennials. So it's really important. I highly recommend you on a regular basis go on Google and just Google your name of your golf course and see where it pops up. Next is third-party vendors. I'd like to talk about first the advantages of them. Obviously, they can help liquidate tough-to-sell tee time slots. It can generate additional revenue. It can also expose your course to customers that might not have heard of your course or never played it. But there are some disadvantages as well. It can further erode your pricing structure. You can have less money per round because you have a reduced green fee average. A lot of the discounters like Golf Now have a free trade time that can further erode your price and value of your golf course. And this next one's the most concerning to me, is it can create loyalty to the discounter rather than the individual golf facility. And so what happens is if it's always the best price on a third-party vendor's site, or it's the easiest to book, people will continue to go there. And what that means is they're just going to continue to go to that discounter rather than your website. So that, in my opinion, is the danger in the long-term proposition of getting too heavily involved with third-party vendors. And there again, it reduces traffic away from your website. So very important to take a look at that and always keep evaluating that. The other thing is, and I call with third-party vendors, I call it follow the loser. The concern sometimes is if all of a sudden you discount one course at $35, and then other courses that were maybe 40 say, oh, wow, they're at 35, we want to go to 32. And all of a sudden 5 courses get in the 32 range. And let's say these courses are all in the same par, about the same quality of golf. Well, the course then gets split 5 ways because all of a sudden everybody's at 32. So the one course that all of a sudden was getting all the rounds at $35 before everybody came in at 32 says, wow, I need to go below 32, and they go to $30. So the concern is that if enough courses just keep following the third-party vendors, they're just going to basically follow the loser to the lowest price, and that's dangerous over time. There again, it's not a good long-term solution for success. Now I'd like to talk about discounting. I think it's important. Some people think when you discount it a $10 rate that you need to just get 20% more rounds. It's actually not the case. In this example that we have here, if you have a $50 rate and you're averaging 100 rounds a day, you're getting about $5,000 a day. And all of a sudden you elect to lower your rate by $20 or 20%, going to $40. Believe it or not, it would take a 25% increase in rounds just to get back to break even. So to get back to the $5,000, you'd have to do 125 rounds. So discounting even can be very good at times, and there's certain times of need when you might need a discount. But I want to just make sure that I caution everybody when you're doing that to make sure that you look at how many rounds more am I going to need just to get back to the break-even proposition of doing that. So in this example, if you discounted 20%, you'd have to get 25% more rounds just to get back to break-even. Instead of increasing revenues, price slashing, you can actually lower the top line and hurt the bottom line. So that's the other danger of it. The other one is your worth proposition. What do people perceive? If you keep discounting on a regular basis over and over and over again, people start to have that as your new perceived value of your rate. And I'll give an example of that. So let's say one of your favorite shirts you found at a store, and it's a great shirt, and you like it in blue, and you bought it for $80. You like the shirt so much, now you want to buy it in white and yellow. And all of a sudden, I'm sorry, you bought this, bird shirt for $80. All of a sudden now, you bought the original shirt, at $60. And all of a sudden now, you go back to the same store and you want to buy it in white or yellow, and they have it back at the original price of $80. Well, at that point, you really like the shirt at $60, but $80, there again, the value of that shirt when you bought it was $60. So it's very, very difficult to go back and increase pricing over time. So be very, I guess the moral of the story is be very cautious as you're discounting to make sure you don't leave it out to an extended period of time where people all of a sudden have that be your perceived value of your golf course, because it's going to be very tough to take it back up. And we saw a lot of this during the last recession. A lot of golf courses were discounting, and when they came out of the recession, it was extremely difficult because they trained those people to get the $20 off of their standard rate, and it was very difficult for a lot of golf courses to get back up to the standard rate that they needed. The other thing is, I've learned over the years is sometimes you'll see competition discounting. And if you don't clearly understand why they're discounting, I strongly recommend you just don't react and discount yourself. Maybe it's that who knows, we've seen a lot of golf courses going bankrupt, or they're going to be closing their doors. I would be very cautious. Just because your competition is discount does not mean that you need to discount. Another example with rates and discounting is, this is a true example of one of our golf courses back in 2008, a lot of years ago. But as you can see on the top part of this slide, the first year we kept our rates at the weekend rate, the higher rate, and we did 114 golfers. We did $5,700 in revenue in golf green fee revenue. Our average rate was $50.42, and our total revenue for golf was $6,000 for that day. Fast forward the next year, we wanted to experiment with it, and we didn't do a holiday rate. We did our just weekday rate. Granted, we got more golfers. We got 133 golfers. We did green fee revenues of $4,200, but our average rate dropped to $32.13, and our total golf revenue was $5,449. So basically, we lost revenue of 13.6%. So when you're doing for those of you that have holiday rates at certain times and looking as to when you're going to put holiday rates out there, really note that discounted rates or the weekday rates during those holidays can sometimes hurt you. There again, you have to look, each course is different, but I would highly recommend you do the analysis of that. I can just tell you at JC Resorts, we created JC Golf Holidays that essentially from the Friday before Christmas till the Sunday after the 1st of January, we have holiday rates for that entire time. We also have them for example, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, etc. We'll even sometimes, depending on where the 4th of July falls, we'll even maybe do the 3rd and 4th of July is the holiday rate, depending on the year. So how do you look at those days when you have a high yield, particularly at the weekday rate? Can you go to your weekend rate and capture more revenue? Okay, now I'd like to shift over to social media. Obviously, it's changing all the time: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc. The key for social media, though, is to make sure you're always engaging fans by asking questions, posting probing comments, and responding to comments. The other way is to educate golfers. For example, a great way to do it is the rules just changed in golf in 2019 pretty drastically. We did some social media campaigns that told golfers about the new rules, particularly also on our website and our loyal JC members. So educating golfers is another great way to do it. Lesson programs. If you're a teacher, it's a great way to use social media to educate and give them little tidbits of a lesson to hopefully then entice them to reach out to you and give you a call to book a lesson. And always make sure it's entertaining, clever, very clever, golf jokes, fun facts. We've done a lot of things always around the major championships. We do a contest to see who picks the winner in the score, and then reward them with rounds of golf and some equipment. And we get a lot of, we're engaging them, but we're also entertaining them through those. So make sure that you're engaging, educating, entertaining when you're using your social media platforms. Ways to grow your distribution channel. The key is just reaching out on a regular basis. That's the most important thing. Making sure you're relevant, you're active, and you're continually doing it on a regular basis. Following other organizations is important. Heavily promoting everybody back to your website, your homepage. There's other areas here to make sure you're running contests, as we mentioned earlier. Making sure you're very engaging your followers in social media. The last area in market I want to talk about is direct sales. It should definitely be a focus at the property for tournaments, memberships, loyalty programs, and those of you that are deep in the food and beverage for catering sales. Direct sales, it takes work and a commitment. I think this is an area that the golf business could greatly improve. I don't think a lot of golf courses focus on direct sales as they should. But it's a great way to create golfers and create your, and control your own destiny as well. The other is sales goals and budget. Make sure when you're doing direct sales, for example, in tournament sales or membership sales, it's being measured and tracked. We're a big believer in making sure that our tournament sales people, catering sales, membership sales, they have incentive plans. We think it's very, very important. We even have incentive plans for our golf shop staff when they're selling JC Players Card. There again, we want to make sure it's top of mind and reward those that can create sales. And the great thing about direct sales too is you can emphasize on value and quality rather than just on rate. You're selling the facility's venue rather than just price. So that's why we believe direct sales are very important. So if you're in the tournament business or want to get in that, highly recommend that you spend time focusing on direct sales. Now I'd like to shift over to finance and accounting, which I know for some of you, thank God it's in the morning because you'll be falling asleep with this. But I think it's important to review some areas, generalities in finance and accounting to be a successful manager in today's golf business. The first thing is budgeting. It's so important to have a great budget. When we're doing our budget, the first thing we do is we evaluate based on recent trends in prior year. What was the primary? The other one is we have 13 different golf courses, and basically 10 different owners of those 13 properties. And so each owner has their own objective. So it's always important to know what the owner or the general manager, what their focus is for the property and understand what that is, because that's going to help drive and dictate the budget as well. And always make sure you allow enough time to analyze the budget for all aspects of your business. What that means is make sure you start early and plenty in advance of the process before the budget's due, so you can do a thorough evaluation. On the revenue standpoint, I just want to touch base on that real quick. First, create a sales and marketing plan. As we talked about earlier, it starts and stops with that. Make sure you reference that sales and marketing plan, and that ties to your budget as you're creating it. The other thing to look at, always make sure you're evaluating for the revenues, the number of weekends, Fridays, weekdays of each month. It's very, very important to take a look at that, because that'll determine how much revenue you can do in a month. For example, sometimes there might be 9 or 10 weekend days in a month opposed to 8. So we've got to look at that. Also, where the Fridays fall can be a big factor as well. So look at those from a revenue standpoint and budgeting. And then on the expense side, similar versus last year trends, need to determine similar expenses last year and how expenses will change. Abnormal expenses. Do we had any legal fees, or if all of a sudden in 1 month you had a lot of spoilage in food and beverage? For example, another area for abnormal revenues, just I want to mention, is this year with the rain. We've had, last year we had, in 2018, in January, February, we had basically no rain. And this year, in my 19 years in San Diego, it's more rain than we've ever had. So really know those trends as well. Fixed versus variable costs, knowing what those are. Any new expenses, for example, if all of a sudden you had old golf carts, and all of a sudden this year you have a brand new fleet, you leased a new fleet, your cost for cart maintenance would be less, or vice versa. If all of a sudden your fleet's getting old, you're probably going to have greater expenses in that. And then always review any contracts you might have to see if there's any special costs, any balloon payments that might be in there, for example, like a cart lease. So those are the things I would strongly consider as you're going through and creating the budget. Know your revenue trends and know your expense trends. Now I want to shift over to flexing expenses. And as I mentioned earlier, this has been the rainiest start to a year that I can remember in a long, long time, and probably 2 decades. And I wanted to just talk about flexing expenses. I'm sure that your ownerships, general managers are talking about this on a regular basis. And the key to being able to flex expenses when your revenues are down, you need to, in my opinion, you need to show to ownership that you're doing something to make adjustments to help increase profitability the best you possibly can. And one way to do that is to maintain your budgeted percentages, which we'll talk about in more detail in just a moment. Always make sure you're checking your point of sale for revenues to determine your weekly, daily, and monthly revenues. Once you projected those revenues, calculate the revenue variance to determine flex expenses that you can cut in a month. And then always make sure you're flexing or adjusting your operating labor accordingly. What that means is, for example, when we knew the rain was coming a few weeks ago for the 4 straight days, we talked to our golf course maintenance teams and our superintendents and said, okay, we know it's going to rain. It's going to rain early and all day. There's no need for the next 3 days, basically, to communicate with your teams that they don't need to come in for the next 3 days because there's nothing they're going to be able to do. It's those kind of things that when you're proactively managing the process to make sure you can still maintain your profitability. And then also for scheduling, check the tee sheet daily, sometimes even hourly, to determine how many players are going to be at the course the following day, and schedule accordingly. Instead of maybe if there's an afternoon shift you think it's going to rain, call the person in advance, tell them you want to put them on call, or for them to call in a couple hours in advance rather than just show up before their shift to save a few labor hours. Okay, now I want to just shift to an example of what I mean by this and how it can affect the operation for the month. So as you see this, this is an example right here where budget revenues was $200,000, and the projected annual revenue was $150,000 based on the loss of revenue due to rain. Is what this course did here as an example. As you can see at the very bottom on the left column, the net profit was going to be $90,000 at 45%. And if you go to the right column, the goal is to try and keep that 45% number. And to do that, as you can see in this example, they flexed labor by $7,500. They flexed operating expenses. And golf course maintenance, they did the same by flexing labor by almost a third, and they flexed operating expenses well, they're still able to drive 45% of profit down to the bottom line and get $68,000. If they wouldn't have done this, it would have cost the owner another, let's see, $25,000, almost $30,000. So these are the kind of things that I can assure you that an ownership group or a general manager is looking at during the challenging months, particularly when it's raining, or if you have a month that you're down in play due to some reason. So I'd encourage you to take a look at this. If, again, I know this is detailed and going through how flexing works, but there again, offline after this presentation, if there's any of you that need help with that, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be glad to help you out with you. Now I'd like to shift over to food and beverage. I know most everybody on this call probably does not involve food and beverage, but I can just tell you the calls I get from PGA professionals that most ask the question asking for help is in food and beverage. Sometimes maybe if you're at a smaller operation, maybe it's a snack bar, and all of a sudden the golf professional needs to take over the snack bar for an extended period of time, or maybe in the future. Or all of a sudden the head golf professional got promoted to being the general manager. Food and beverage, it's just critical. So I'm just going to go over some of the highlights of food and beverage from a big picture standpoint. Number one, very similar to food and beverage profit, involves cost of goods, how you price that, vendor pricing, theft. Theft is even bigger, in my opinion, in food and beverage than in golf. There's two other ones that can affect your profit in food and beverage opposed to golf, and that is first is ordering and spoilage. Obviously, a golf shirt doesn't ever go away, or it doesn't have a shelf life, but I can assure you ham and cheese and bread definitely does. The other one is portion control, making sure you're having consistent portion control, which we're going to get into an example in a little bit later. The other one is labor, very similar to what we have in golf. There's fixed costs in labor for management and catering sales, and then there's variable labor in the kitchen staff, servers, and banquets. This is an example of a core card, and this is to ensure that your pricing is accurate. Then if you have to do any food and beverage, I'd be glad to send you this Excel spreadsheet that kind of lays this out. And I just did a simple example with a hot dog. And we think, well, it's just the price of the hot dog. In this example, as you can see, yes, there's a price to the hot dog, but you also got the hot dog bun. You've got a side, let's say some potato salad or chips, relish, onion, mayo, mustard, ketchup, and a garnish. All that adds into the cost of that hot dog. In addition, we always put in some money for waste, because there is going to be waste. As you've seen a lot of golf courses, they make hot dogs and they sit on the roller and the steamer at the end of the day, and most of those get thrown away. So there's always going to be some waste to some degree. And by that, then you can then determine what your menu price should be, and you can analyze what your gross profit's going to be. So it's important to note when you're talking about food and beverage, or even just when your department head meetings, you can relate to this, because this will definitely affect your pricing. This is called a menu build out, and we do this for all of our different items. What it is, it's basically a recipe card that allows all employees to see, that's making this a simple case there again, like a hamburger, what is needed to make the hamburger and the procedure in which you make it. We also like to try to add a photo. And this is very important because we're always going to try to make our food and beverage products as consistent as possible. In addition, when staff changes, you want to be able to educate them and communicate to them what a good hamburger would look like. So we highly recommend that on a regular basis, you're reviewing this with your staff and making sure that you have good recipe cards like this, so you can have a very consistent product and also maintain food costs, because it's portion controlled as well. So that wraps up the food and beverage portion. I just wanted to give those highlights I think are very, very important to know about food and beverage. Now I'd like to shift over to something that unfortunately is getting more and more prevalent in our world today, and especially in the state of California, and that is wage and hour law. I wanted to spend a few minutes to talk about this. It's not fun, or it's not sexy and not exciting, but it's very, very important. I can tell you, being involved with clubs and talking to other clubs, there's very few golf courses that follow these rules well, and it's very dangerous over time, because I know of a couple of golf courses in Southern California that have had class action lawsuits because they weren't following the labor laws well, and to the tune, after legal fees, anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000. So it's very, very important. The first one I want to mention is meal breaks. And as you can see here, non-exempt employees are entitled to take and provided a duty-free, meaning they can't be interrupted with work or ask questions about work for at least 30 minutes before working more than 5 hours in a workday. So the key is that they get 30 minutes uninterrupted before working more than 5 hours in a workday. If they're going to work more than 10 hours, they get a second 30-minute break. And there is one exception. I highlighted it down below in the slide here. If an employee works for a period not more than 6 hours, the employee may choose to waive the unpaid meal period with written consent to the supervisor. And make sure you keep those records, scan them, keep them in a place that's very, very safe. Because if you get audited or there's an issue, it is 100% onus on the golf course and the golf course owner and management to prove the fact that they did get their meal breaks. So very, very important there again, working more than 5 hours to get 30 minutes. The exception is they work 6 hours or less, 6 hours or less, then they can waive the meal period, but they have to sign off on it. The other one is a 10-minute break. Employees are entitled to a paid, and there again, duty-free break. Rest period for 10 minutes every 4 hours of work. So basically, for every 4 hours, they get a 10-minute break. Now, this one, we don't have them punch in and out in, and I don't know anybody that really does. But it's very important that you allow them to take this break, and you can, in some way or form or fashion, prove that they did get their 10-minute break. Particularly on the golf course maintenance, where I've seen different golf courses not follow this rule is on the golf course maintenance side of things. But they are definitely 100% entitled to it, the state of California, and it's very important they get that. There again, every 4 hours. So you try to have this rest break happen before, obviously, their lunch period, and then if they're working 8-hour shift, you would have it happen after their lunch period. So you'd have ideally a 10-minute break before their lunch period, the 30-minute, again, unpaid lunch period, and then they would have another paid 10-minute lunch break after their lunch if they're working a full 8-hour shift. Very, very important to follow, very important to track, because this will be more and more prevalent in the state of California over the upcoming years, and you'll see more and more golf courses get slapped with fines and penalties due to it. Okay, now I'd like to talk about communication for success. For being a successful manager, in regards to business, golf business, wherever, communication is the most important thing. It's where I think there's been the most issues just in general in any type of business. It's lack of communication. So to start with that, great communication starts with asking yourself, what is your relationship with your other department heads? Food and beverage team, golf course superintendent, accounting, HR, IT, which as time progresses is more and more important. I can tell you in our world, our accounting and HR team, it's just important that you have a very good relationship to them because they can make or break your success at a facility, I promise you. But always keep evaluating that. What is your relationship? Are you spending time with your superintendent? Are you talking to your food and beverage team? Are you communicating well with golf tournaments and et cetera, and things like that? So really, first off, what is your relationship with your department heads? And I would seriously spend some time to focus on that and put time in. The next one is all great leaders communicate effectively. I know that's pretty, it's probably no kidding, but communicating effectively is the key to that. And time management. I see so many times managers, if there's a tournament, they'll go around and tell one person to do one thing, another to do another. Instead of getting everybody together and creating a huddle and putting it in writing what everyone's job's to do and communicating all at once, it's much more efficient to do it that way than to just go out and just tell everybody individually. Another example of this is, I'm a big believer in making sure that you host regular staff meetings on a weekly basis. It's so important to make sure that everyone is communicated and knows what is going on for each department. For example, Tournaments, and going back to the tournament example, so many times the food and beverage operation is not communicated well on both ends, whether they're not communicating well with golf or golf not communicating with the food and beverage. It's imperative that is being communicated. In upcoming events, the same way. Golf course superintendents with golf course maintenance practices. It's very, very important to make sure that you're always communicating and having regular staff meetings. It's imperative that you have a weekly, in my opinion, it's imperative that every golf course has a weekly staff meeting so everyone's on the same page. We also like to add some training in there as well. The other one we're doing of recent years is making sure we're completely focused on is safety. With workman's comp getting more and more of a challenge, making sure that you're not only training them for an operational advancement, but also for safety, making sure that it's in a safe workplace. And then shifting into training, try to have regular training sessions. The key is to try to make the entire team better, not just one individual at a time. Obviously at nights is the challenge with the golf business and having meetings is you're so busy during the day, it's tough to get everybody together. So unfortunately, the only time to do it really effectively is after the golf shop is closed. But it's so important to make sure you do that on a regular basis. It's the best money you can spend to pay that extra labor, to have the team come in that evening, get pizza, and have a team member to go through it. The other thing I see in the golf business sometimes a lot is always train a team member before doing it yourself. And what I mean by that is if all of a sudden you're having to, I'll use a tournament example, having to go out and set something up for the tournament with the golf carts. Instead of doing it yourself sometimes, do the old analogy of instead of handing somebody a piece of fish, train them how to fish they'll eat for a lifetime. Do the same thing. Take your team through. Show them how to set up the carts to do it right. And show them by a good example, training and going through, making sure they have time to ask questions. And then after that, you can, number one, it does two things. It frees you up time to be more of a manager rather than being a worker. Number one, to help you get better and elevate yourself in your position. But also you're training and mentoring young outside staff or some of the golf shop staff in your golf shops. So there again, before you go to do something yourself, a lot of times stop and think, is there somebody I could be trained to do this as well as me just doing it myself so I can make them better and make my operation better. After you've trained them, also make sure there again, give them time to ask questions. Make sure the trainee understands it and can demonstrate what they were trained. And then obviously after a couple of training sessions, have them do it, talk to them about it, reevaluating. There again, communication and making sure you understand it. And then lastly is having accountability for that. Hold the team members accountable for making sure that they're getting better and improving. I can see with a lot of golf courses we've gone to where they might have had a substandard employee. First thing we ask is, okay, what do they have in their file? And there's nothing. The owner or general manager or the golf professional complain about this employee, how horrible they are. But there again, nothing was done in writing. And in the state of, there again, coming back to our labor laws, in the state of California, if you don't have it in writing today, it almost means nothing. So I urge you, if there is an employee that's not doing something, put it in writing and document it and talk to them about it. It's also good for the employee as well, because otherwise, if it's just conversations, sometimes they might not completely understand what is needed for them to improve. So it's also best for the employee to do that so they can get better as well. And over time, it'll make your life a lot better because the two things will happen. The employee will get better and they'll understand exactly where they stand. Or B, if you do have to move them out, you will have a paper trail of that and it's documented in writing, which you must have in the state of California. And so with that, John, it takes my exact 45 minutes, I believe. And I want to thank everyone for being on the presentation today and be glad to answer any questions. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much, John. Holly Kennedy would like you to expand on your thoughts and philosophies regarding seniors and senior rates, marketing to seniors.
Okay. Yeah. So what that means, what I meant by that, Holly. First off, Holly, hope all is well in beautiful San Diego. What I meant by that is with the seniors, if you discount to them, and I'm not saying you shouldn't discount to seniors, But a blanket discount, if you just say, okay, 7 days a week, we're going to have a senior rate. If you go to the slide that I just put back up here, what that means is if you do a senior rate at 45 or older, it's basically 72% of your business. If you do a senior rate at 55 or older, you're discounting to 58% of the rounds played at your golf course. This is a national average. It's probably about the same in Southern California. It's probably very close to this. So just be ready and willing to know that when that happens, that's going to be your new rate for them. And that's going to be your new probably average rate during that period of time for all seniors. So it's a very dangerous slope to just have a generalized senior rate, because you're essentially discounting to over half of your golfers. Now, if all of a sudden you looked at the utilization of your tee sheet and you realize that Tuesday after 10 o'clock, my utilization goes down to 30% of the tee sheet between then and my twilight, it might be good to have an afternoon senior rate. But there again, you're not discounting to the entire population of seniors. You're trying to fill a spot or a gap in your tee sheet with the seniors, but you're not training them just to think that your new rate, if your rate's typically $50, that you're discounting it to $40 just for the seniors. So I hope that answers your question, Holly, and that's why we believe that just generic or general senior rates are very, very dangerous over time.
When you talk about no home runs in the golf business in terms of marketing and success is defined by a series of small accomplishments, can you talk a little bit about some examples that you've seen, particularly in JC Resorts? It doesn't have to be JC Resorts, other companies or individual operators, some successful practices that you've seen that have come from that step-by-step.
You bet, absolutely. So what I mean by that in general is in the golf business, in my opinion, I've never seen it, there's no one silver bullet that's gonna, if you create this one program, it's gonna solve all your marketing and revenue problems in the golf business. The closest thing we've seen, to be honest, we have our JC Players Card program here in San Diego. We have over 10,000 members in it. They play an average of 15.5 rounds each, and it's our bread and butter. We believe in that loyalty program because of that. But there again, even with that, the success of that program, there is no one thing. You've got to do a lot of different things. And what I mean by that is, so you have your loyalty program and staying focused on that in marketing, making sure your website is good and fresh, and you have good search engine optimization. So if somebody Googles you, you're gonna pop up. Making sure that your website, always looking to make sure that you can see you book tee times very easily, that you can request a tournament proposal very easily on that website. Those kind of things. Social media, are you doing that on a regular basis? Database, is your database fresh? Are you making sure that are you going through on a regular basis and merging out old data? Are you doing enough email campaigns out to that database and marketing to that database? So that's what I mean by there is no home runs. There's you just have to do a bunch of things well and always evaluating those things. I'll be honest, we're always evaluating all of our programs. And another example of that is we started a program about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, called the 2030 Club. We were looking at, as everyone knows, have seen, we're missing the golfers ages 20 to 30. So we created a special program. You have to be ages 20 to 30, show your driver's license to be able to get in the program to sign up for it. And we track it, and we captured all these people's data. We started, I think it's like 19 months ago, and we have almost 2,000 people in that program already. And what that did is we found an area of people that really, it's very challenging when you're 20 to 30 to afford to be able to play golf. We wanted to drive them to our golf courses, but most importantly, I wanted their data while they were young and starting to play golf, so they, number one, stay in the game of golf. Hopefully they're going to play more because it's a discounted rate. And to be honest, hopefully they're going to play our golf courses because we're offering this 2030 program. And there again, I've got their data now. I have almost 2,000 people in that program that as they go out and they turn 30 and they're not going to be able to be part of that program anymore, I'm going to market to those people when they turn 30 and 31 and 32 on a regular basis to make sure we keep them and have them stay in the game. So that's what I mean by always looking at different programs, evaluating it, and always trying to reinvent yourself and looking at the things that aren't working. You got to try a lot of things And sometimes they're not going to work, and that's okay. Just move those out. If you're working on 50 different marketing things, move those out. And if you find 5 that aren't working, try and find 5 new that you add into the plan. And there again, it all starts and stops with a good marketing plan. It takes time to do the marketing plan, but I assure you, if you don't have a marketing plan, you're not going to be a successful marketer.
Now, you kind of answered this one here, but talking about the importance of marketing to the age demographic of the 25 to 34, has there been a marketing program established to reach this age group prior to your 20 to 30 program?
We haven't, and I don't think the NGF, National Golf Foundation, USGA, PGA, anybody's hit that market. And is what happens is the reason you lose that, you know, in that example, it did have the 25 to 44 and when we were losing that market. But it starts earlier. It starts not only when they're juniors, but it really starts when they're 20 to 30. And all the stats from the NGF, National Golf Foundation, state that that's when we're really losing them. We're still doing some decent work with juniors, even though juniors are down over recent years, the last 2 decades, and particularly the last 10 years. We're really losing. They're really dropping off as ages 20 to 30. So we've got to be able to keep them in that, because if we keep them during that period of time and keep them playing, so if they were, let's say they're a junior golfer, if they go to college and they, number 1, can't afford it, or number 2, just don't have the time, or number 3, they lose interest, we've got to be able to keep that interest during that period of time, and that will then sustain them into their 30s and 40s. But if we lose them early, whether it's at the junior level or even the 20 to 30, when they're starting their careers and they're at their stage where they have the least money, they're not on mom and dad's payroll anymore, and they're on their own and they can't really afford golf. If you lose them then, it's very, very difficult. I won't say impossible, but very difficult to get them back at that point. So you've got to keep them in that age range so they stick through it, and then it'll accordion out over years, and they'll stay in the game, which will help them in ages 30 to 55 when the seniors are actually starting to play more golf. That answer the question, John?
Yes, no, it does, most certainly. That concludes the Q&A for this morning's Catalyst webinar series. I want to thank Mr. McNair for his time today. Want to also remind everybody that the quiz for this morning's Catalyst will be going out here shortly. It's a 10-question quiz. Please take the quiz and return it to Sharon Kerfman at headquarters, skerfman@pgahq.com. A score of 70% or higher on the Catalyst quiz will earn 1 MSR credit for attending this morning's webinar. Also want to remind everybody that our next Catalyst webinar series is on March 14th. We have Ted Olothario, PGA Director of Golf and Golf Program Development for the PGA of America, who's going to be talking about the new PGA.Coach and ADM certification program coming up here on Thursday, March 14th. Want to encourage everybody to be on that. Also, the following Catalyst after that is PGA National President Susie Whaley, who's going to be on the Catalyst webinar on Thursday, March 28th. So very excited to make those 2 announcements to the group this morning. But John, thank you very, very much for your time and your expertise. We really appreciate you being on the Catalyst this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the time.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.